Why do engineers opt for M.Tech?
Well, either they want to buy some time for writing some competitive exam and they want a studious environment and access to library and time to study for themselves. So they join some M.Tech somewhere where they get to stay in the hostel. They can stay on campus. They have access to library and they can continue studying. And usually in M.Tech, some scholarship is also admissible nowadays. So they have some pocket money also. So in the meantime, they can start writing for preparing for civil services or for whatever exams they want to apply, say MBA, CAT or whatever, or GMAT. So they keep preparing, and in the meantime, to keep themselves busy officially, they are doing MBA, they are doing M.Tech, and M.Tech is that way not taxing and as much as graduation is. There are not so many papers. Okay, it is relatively relaxed, and it is more towards research orientation. So they get a lot of time to do their things. That is one reason. Second reason is if they have done graduation from some sidey institute which is not known, which is not recognized enough, then it makes sense to have a brand from a good institution like IIT. So it makes sense to do M.Tech there so that you get a stamp of IIT and your esteem value and market value goes up. So that's another major reason why people go for M.Tech MS. Other thing is sometimes, of course, the brighter boys may get many job offers as soon as they pass. So they may not have inclination to go for M.Tech, but those who do not get very good lucrative jobs upfront, to bid time they sometimes join M.Tech. Okay, so these are by far the three reasons. The fourth reason, which is a minuscule minority, somebody is genuinely interested in technology or in some particular domain. There may be people. There are people who, for example, may have aspiration to join ISRO. So such people may go for aeronautical engineering or some M.Tech from such subject which is never taught in graduation. Okay, but that population is minuscule. I wish that population was in majority, but unfortunately, it's not so practically. You look around, doesn't look like that.
What kind of work can one expect to do post M.Tech?
Doing M.Tech actually largely brands people for teaching and research kind of jobs. At the most, design. Okay, so most of the M.Techs end up either becoming professors after doing PhD, or they join some research institution and they go in thick of research, where of course the openings are few and far between. There are not so many openings in India. And the third group, of course, goes to some private companies, joining their R&D centers or, design departments, the premium design department. For example, if somebody wants to do, let us say, gas turbine design, you have to be M.Tech. It's a specialized field. So also for maybe additive manufacturing or laser applications and stuff like that. Yes, people do M.Tech sometimes for going into these specialized fields, and then they go in design centers or application engineering side for all these things. Okay. But the pain point is that most of these departments and companies often work for overseas from India. So they don't work so much for Indian market, they work more for overseas. So it's like virtual brain drain, you can say. So sitting here, they work for somebody abroad. Okay. So there is a category of people, and of course nowadays IT is a big boom. So there are postgraduate courses in all kind of IT related subjects, computer science and IT and all. So people do these courses, and after that they join some company and start working for overseas again, or big multinationals. Yeah. But usually in Indian, of course, they some of them do go to DRDO and institutions like that. And there are, but very few research opportunities in Indian market, so to say. So usually that is the job profile. The problem is these are all specialized fields. So soon they face a situation that their contemporaries who did not do MS and M.Tech, who instead diversified into IT or who did MBA, actually career wise they rise much faster than this lot who do M.Tech. So after a while they start getting frustrated when they see their peers rising way above them much faster. They grow horizontally and vertically both in terms of, because somebody who joins, let us say, a production shop as a graduate engineer, after let us say 10 years, he could be a factory manager where some 500 people may be working under him. Whereas M.Tech person would join a design department, he would become a senior designer or the design chief at most, where there may be some 10 people working under him. So it does become frustrating after a while. But thanks to the specialization and expertise element, the lateral spread does not happen so much. And actually very few companies have the kind of system to take care of their experts in terms of career and money wise growth. So that becomes a dissatisfying element.
Where should they go for M.Tech or other options?
Usually premium institutions, if they really want to learn something worthwhile. But of course, many colleges, local colleges in various cities also have nowadays option of M.Tech. But in most of those places, it has becomes like just having a degree for the sake of a degree. Learning wise, there may not be so much of exposure because the research labs may not be that kind of equipped, and even the guides may not be having that kind of bandwidth. So it does matter from where somebody does M.Tech. But of course, there is other option of going abroad for MS, which is a different game altogether.
Great.
Unfortunately, what has happened in talking of M.Tech, that in medical, if somebody does post graduation, somebody does MS or MD. Now, the stature of doctor switches substantially in terms of competence level. Like from a normal MBBS, if somebody becomes a heart surgeon or a brain surgeon, or you know, so specialization does make a lot of difference in medical. Post graduation is a very big asset in medical side, but it is not quite so in engineering side. In engineering side, it is just another degree. It gives you just one notch advantage at the time of recruitment only. So if all others are getting recruited as engineer, the person with M.Tech will get recruited as senior engineer, one level higher, which may be at best an advantage of 3 or 4 years in terms of seniority. That's all. But that's also at the entry level only, not afterwards. So afterwards, those who enter as plain graduates may rise much faster. They may grow horizontally and vertically both and reach places, and whereas the specialist gets confined to his own silo, his own cell, his own domain. So the phenomena of getting imprisoned in own domain is common to see with M.Tech.
Does it really help at real jobs? Where should it ideally help? Having an M.Tech.
In certain jobs, it will certainly help. For example, in real design. But the problem is that how many Indian companies do real design? From engineering fundamentals, it's very few. Real R&D, how many organizations do real R&D? Research they don't do, development they do often. More than development, they do testing. Now for that, okay, there is a trend that, okay, they take only postgraduates, so they get employed all right, but then does not use their M.Tech so much. Okay. So in fact, it is difficult to find instances where people are seen using the content of what is taught in M.Tech after they come to the job. And those must be very lucky people who are able to use it. Otherwise, they learn something like, again, in M.Tech, like they did in graduation, and what they end up doing is something totally different thereafter. See, for example, if somebody does, let us say, M.Tech in industrial hydraulics, meaning that person will be taught details of servo hydraulics, servo valves, and making closed loop systems with hydraulics and all, designing them, proving them, troubleshooting them, all kind of things. But how many industries in India would do that work at the basic level? Most of what is done in Indian industry is selecting some aggregates from some catalog or some CAD model and pick and paste. So design is done by fix or brick, like you pick up the bricks and start fixing virtually, make a virtual assembly on your screen, and that becomes your product. So classically design is not done, it is just mix and match, pick up things from catalog and just go on assembling. Now, doing that activity does not require the rigor of M.Tech. That anybody can do with a little experience. So basically what they end up doing after some time is that they will become sales and marketing person or applications person who will largely start convincing their customer why they should buy. So they will use their knowledge of technology just to convince a technocrat customer. But they are not doing design, they are not doing anything, they are just flaunting their M.Tech that they are qualified, and based on that, they try to turn themselves into a salesperson. So they start doing a sales and marketing kind of job soon, or they become agent for some foreign OEM. Somebody who is selling hydraulic wares, aggregates, they become Indian agent, Indian face for that company, which is again way different from what they learned in M.Tech.
What are the risks of doing an M.Tech?
Unless somebody is really interested in that domain and going deep into that technology, in that subject, there's no point in limiting one's possibilities of pursuing career thereafter. Okay. Now, unfortunately, once you do M.Tech, you sever many of those possibilities. So just because you are M.Tech in that subject, say suppose you have done M.Tech in engine design, you can be employed only as engine designer somewhere, right? You can't join somewhere as a marketing manager, obviously. So it becomes difficult to switch your field after you do M.Tech. Unless you are ready to forego the M.Tech totally and then do MBA on top of it and then totally go to finance side or some other side. Now that is a different matter. But otherwise, doing M.Tech severely restricts your possibilities. So either it should be that good, that much proficient, that much elitism should be there that you are able to go far within the same domain, should be able to rise vertically. Because lateral spread will not happen. So unless somebody has that kind of quality and energy that one can launch oneself like a rocket vertically, restricting all the lateral movement possibilities of spread, they get compromised. Okay, so that is a big problem.
Why do students opt for MS?
Many young people and their parents have aspirations that they should go and settle abroad, mostly US. They are all US born. So doing MS is the easiest way to migrate because you get a student visa relatively easily. It is relatively easier to get some financial support also once you get admission. And then after doing MS, one can stay on further and start pursuing PhD. By the time one does PhD, he or she would have completed more than 5 years there, so becomes eligible for green card. So that is the way the dynamics works. It is easier to move to US under the garb of doing MS there. That is one motivating factor. Other is, of course, from logistics point of view, universities are usually in far off places away from cities where the cost of living is not much in US. So living on university in a shared accommodation is relatively cheap. So people find that it is easily affordable. So they just go there. They are able to live there for some years in shared accommodation, do their MS, do their PhD, pick up some job there, get married, and stay on. Simple. So that's the reason why people go for MS. There is other category of people who are technically inclined, who find that in India their possibilities as a technocrat are severely limited. So they go there and they do M.Tech, MS, and pick up a high-tech job, a technology-centric job, a design-centric job, a research-oriented job, and they do exceeding well there. And many of them, of course, also become professors subsequently, or they become fairly senior people in their organizations. So that sets a kind of precedence for others to follow.
What are the potential job opportunities or any other work that any professional can get after completing an MS degree?
Now, after completing MS, of course, from wherever they do, whichever state, the industries around them can pick them up for jobs. Only the flip side is that in US, the jobs are not permanent. Apart from professorship, there is nothing which is a steady job, so to say. Those are contracts. So you get selected for a contract of 2 years or 5 years, and after that, it can be renewed, but may not be renewed also. So people keep changing their domains, people keep changing their companies, their job profiles, and sometimes you see them doing something totally different from what they were qualified to do. Like I know of a friend of mine who was an electronics engineer. He went to US and he did MS in aerospace engineering. After that, he got to work with NASA. Good. He was proud, and we were also proud that our friend has reached NASA. Now, after some 5 years, we learned that his project got over in NASA, and the job was tied to the project. So he had no job. And after working in NASA in aerospace, there was no other place where he could do that kind of job. Of course, he could have come to ISRO, but then he did not want to come back. Now, after some time, it became a big financial pressure to stay there. So, after another 5-10 years, we learned that the friend and his wife started a chain of Gujju restaurants all over the place in US, and they were doing exceedingly well. Very good. But then for running Gujju restaurant, why does one have to do aerospace engineering? That becomes a big question mark. But it happens. People end up doing anything because one has to make the two ends meet. So if the job is not guaranteed, if there is a trend that pink slip keeps raining anytime in companies, what do people do? So they will get either underemployed or inappropriately employed or unemployed. So this is what happens. But okay. Now, survival may be possible. They may be living very well also. But then somewhere there is some problem.
What is a typical career path for somebody who's done MS?
If one joins, of course, if one goes to university and institution and becomes professor, the person will become professor, head of department, and follow the hierarchy in academics. If one comes to research lab, of course, there are levels there also. So one may end up retiring as a director in some research organization eventually. Say scientist C, scientist D, scientist C, whatever grades are there after that, one may become a director or something somewhere. In industries, one may start as a, say, let us say, senior designer, senior engineer. After that, one may become designer, chief designer, design in chief. What more? The thing is, engine design department will have only few people and it can have only one head. So hopefully by the time the person retires, he would have opportunity to become head. But what more? He surely can't become a general manager. I mean, even if his designation becomes general manager, but functionally he cannot become a generalist manager in that sense, unless he forgoes his domain totally and diversifies into something else. So that's pretty much the career path.
What are the risks associated with doing an MS and staying in the US?
Not risk, I will say the troubles. Risk is, of course, losing the job, which can happen anyway in any stream in US anytime. It's not specific to MS. I mean, even MBAs can lose a job. Anybody can lose a job in US nowadays. But even IT people lose jobs left, right, and center. That's not a big deal anymore. So risk, I will not talk. I will talk more about the discomforting factors which are there. The biggest problem is social isolation. Because in India, what do we enjoy the most? We enjoy the most chit-chatting, whiling away time, sitting on a katta having tea or a fag. In US, you don't get to do that. Because in US, nobody will talk to you unless they have some work with you. So nobody casually talks to anybody, right? And Indians who are there, they behave more Americans than Americans themselves. So they are much more reserved, much more aloof, much more far removed from socialization. They don't welcome you so easily. Okay. So they may not be downright hostile, but then they are not welcoming either. So that isolation becomes a big issue. Who to talk and what to talk. While you are busy in the work, it's fine. The time goes. But when you are free, what to do becomes a big question. So, and Indians are overworked even there. They work for long hours, even during weekend. Not like Americans who switch themselves off after 5 o'clock and they don't work on holidays. Our people, first of all, they may be earning less or they are insecure, so they slog much more. They end up putting much more hours of work. And in that process, they burn out very fast. So they burn out themselves and they don't have time for themselves and they don't have time to foster relations. So they become loner and they find that they are no longer able to pursue their Indian hobbies, what they were able to easily pursue here in India. So that becomes sometimes a trouble. So living in US comes at a grave risk. Plus, in India, of course, nowadays in India also it has started happening that retrenchments and pink slips. In US, it is very common and it has been there. Whenever there is a downturn in business, they mercilessly chop off thousands of jobs overnight. So that is something which is always a sword hanging on the head. It can happen with anybody, anytime. So these are some of the inconvenient points of being there. Same trend is seen that either students write their GRE TOEFL when they are in their final year, so that without any break they are able to pursue their MBA. But at best they will get employed somewhere in some bigger company as a GET and work there for 1 or 2 years. And by the time their training gets over, they would be getting admission for some MS course. So they would fly off immediately after training. Now this is what typically happens. So initially they join bigger organization in hordes. Say hundreds of people are seen joining as graduate engineers. But after 2 years, you see just about 5 or 10 of them are left. The remaining have flown to US or they have gone to MBA side. It's a common phenomena to see. And after 10 years, 20 years, you find that very few, only countable people remain in the organization.